Hey guys, we are back updating the power rankings for the Amazing Race 36 following episode 4, and this was kind of an interesting episode. We definitely learned some more about what teams are thinking going into the race, as well as an interesting outcome, but we'll get to that soon enough. But there are 10 teams to talk about, and not to waste any more time, let's go right into the video. So starting off at number 10, we have the boots from this week, and here we have Michelle and Sean. And this was kind of a surprising outcome, considering that they weren't even in last for most of the leg here. And they did seem to be in an okay spot coming into the roadblock, but they just completely crumbled that position, going from 7th place all the way to last, where they were eventually eliminated. And based off the ending scene, it seemed like it took them literally hours to complete the roadblock, which is pretty funny there. But realistically, they were a team that I was never too high on. I felt like they were mostly bottom feeders, and it didn't seem like they had much of a shot in the long term. Though coming into the episode, it didn't seem like they were likely to be the boots here. But obviously they're not out of the race, to where they're here at number 10. And with that, there are 9 teams left in the race to talk about, and as usual, I'll be ranking them based on how likely I think they are to win the race based off their edit and current race position. But number 9, the team that I believe is the least likely to win from this point on, is Kishori and Karishma. And really, I think this is largely due to their track record, where I feel like up to this point, they've probably been the least consistent team up to this point, where they started the leg in 8th place, and they kind of just hung around that same spot for the rest of the leg, eventually falling to 9th place by the end of it. So really, they haven't been very strong across the race, and I feel like with their consistently bad placements across the race, I can't really have them any higher than number 9. Now moving on to number 8, and we have another team that I'm not feeling that great about at this point, but we do have Sunny and Busy. And it did seem like for a lot of the leg that they were pretty doomed to go home here, where they were the only team to not finish the wall detour, where they took forever on that. They even switched detours at a point where all the other teams had already finished. And considering they ended up switching to the more time-consuming detour, it did seem like they were pretty unlikely to recover, but somehow they did, and they didn't even get second to last either, where they were able to finish in 8th place. So again, it's not the worst leg for them in the world, and they technically are only one spot below where they started at the beginning of the leg. But still, I feel like they're a pretty unlikely team to win at this point, and it wouldn't shock me if they're out relatively soon, to where they're here at number 8. Now moving on to number 7, and we have a team who I've kind of been slipping on as the season has gone along, but here we have Yvonne and Melissa. And they're a team that is kind of just there on the show. I feel like they haven't really brought too much to the table edit-wise, where yes, they talk about in this episode how they're closer to each other than they have been before the race, but even so, their actual performance here isn't that impressive. They actually fall to 9th place at one point, being second to last coming into the roadblock, and they are able to recover to a degree, eventually finishing in 7th place. So not a terrible leg, but I feel like they are kind of being outshined by other teams, and I feel like they're pretty unlikely to win at this point, to where they're here at number 7. Now moving on to number 6, and I've actually dropped on this team compared to last week. I feel like they are kind of starting to lose it to a degree, but we do have Derek and Shalisa, and I found this to be a pretty mediocre leg for them, where they came into it in 3rd place. They even get a confessional at the beginning about how like they've been pretty steady and that their plan is to not change anything, only for that to completely backfire on them, where they end up falling over the course of the leg, where they end up being 5th place at the detour, 5th place coming out of it, but then they later fall to 7th place by the end of the roadblock, and they are able to squeak out a 6th place finish by the end of it. But considering that they got the content there about how they're not going to change anything, only for it to backfire, it's a pretty bad sign in my eyes, both from a race perspective, but also from an edit perspective, to where I did decide to drop them down to number 6. Now moving on to number 5, and we're going from a team that I moved down on from last week to a team that I moved up on from last week, and that is Angie and Danny. And they did have a resurgence here, where they came into the leg in 9th place, pretty bad spot, but they were able to do pretty well here, where they were able to do pretty well on the detour here, going from 8th place all the way up to 3rd place, which really just showed that in general, that wall detour was much easier and faster compared to the others, Sunny and Busy notwithstanding, and they were able to come out of this leg in 3rd place, which is not too bad. And we also got focus on their alliance with Amber and Vinny, which definitely paid off in this leg, where they got help from them during the roadblock. So I feel like that's definitely a boon for them. I feel like they're probably in a better spot at this point compared to where they were before. Now, realistically, I feel like other teams are more likely to edge them out by the end of it, and I still think they could be in some trouble later on, but I feel like I'm probably higher on them now than I was before, which is why they're here number 5. Now moving on to number 4, and we have a team that I'm still relatively high on, though realistically their performance here wasn't that great, and here we have Juan and Shane. And again, they're pretty much in the middle of the pack at this point where they came into the leg in 4th place. And while they fall behind to 6th place coming into the roadblock due to all the traffic that they ran into on the way there, they were able to recover, being able to scrape out a 5th place finish by the end of the leg there. So again, not too bad. We also see their alliance with Raw and Letitia where they were helping each other during the roadblock as well. So I do find that aspect pretty interesting there. Again, I feel like they're probably pretty big characters on the season. Like, we got personal content from them here as well. And again, with their alliance with Ron and Letitia, it does feel like they're being developed to a degree. And I feel like they're probably a team set up for longevity across the season. I can't really see them falling apart here, especially with how consistent they've been, relatively speaking, which is why I still have them here number 4. Now moving on to number 3, and we have a team who I just mentioned, and here we have Rod and Letitia. And again, they're still doing all right across the leg. They're not doing poorly per se, even though they are technically in the middle of the pack at this point, where they came into the leg in 5th place. And while they did drop to 6th place during the detour, we see them being able to recover afterwards, jumping up to 5th place by the end of the roadblock. We see them helping the likes of Juan and Shane out on the roadblock, and they're even able to edge out Juan and Shane despite them finishing the roadblock after them, which I do find somewhat impressive due to their ability to find Phil at that point. So again, I feel like they're still going to be major characters on the season, and I feel like with their alliance with Juan and Shane, it wouldn't shock me if they manage to continue doing well across the race here, which is a big reason why I still have them here at number 3. Now moving on to number 2, and it is the top 2 finishers from this leg, and it's just a matter of ordering them. But number 2, I did decide to go with Amber and Vinny, and I did debate this to a degree considering how bad their early race was, but also their content in this episode where there's a lot of drama between them in this episode, with like Amber feeling like she doesn't have much self-confidence and Vinny like pressuring them to try to come in first across his leg, only for them to later come in second by the end of it. So I did question whether this was necessarily good content for them. But again, they're still pretty big characters on the season at this point, and I feel like with their ability to remain the top of the pack after their early recovery is probably a good sign for them moving forward. You also have them working with other teams like Angie and Danny here. So I do feel higher on them at this point compared to other teams. And really their consistent performance across these last 2 legs is also a pretty good sign for me. But I feel like the number 1 team has been more consistent at this point, which is why I still have them here at number 2. And now, at number 1, the team that I believe is the most likely to win the Amazing Race, 36 at this point, is still Ricky and Cesar. And really, they've been the most consistent team in the race up to this point, getting their 2nd win in a row. And really, they never lead the top 2 across this leg, where while they do fall to 2nd by the end of the detour, they were literally right behind Amber and Vinny the whole time, where literally they solved the wall detour immediately after them. So they were pretty much on their tail. And while they did finish 2nd on the roadblock, they were able to pass them, mainly because Amber and Vinny decided to stay behind to help Angie and Danny on the roadblock. So again, a bit questionable how they actually won the leg there, but still they're at the top of the pack. And I feel like with their performance across the race being the most consistent of the rest of the teams, I feel like that's something that's pretty hard to ignore at this point. Then also they've been getting pretty positive content across the season. I feel like I have no choice really but to say that they are the frontrunners at this point, which is why I still have them here at number 1. And there we go, that will do it for this week's video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe, really has it with the channel. And I'll be back again next week to update the Power Rankings again, so you can look forward to that. I'm covering other shows right now, such as Survivor 46 and Big Brother Canada 12, so you can expect weekly Power Rankings of those shows. My friend Ruby is running a Hell's Kitchen org, so if you want to play in that, I'll leave a link to join the server in the description. I'm on Patreon, so if you want to consider supporting the channel, you can do so by clicking the link in the description. And you can also join the Discord server by also clicking the link in the description. There's a lot of stuff coming your way, but for now, that is the video. See ya.